U.S. and Iran sign a deal to end their 4-month-long war and reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Pakistan says the preliminary agreement takes immediate effect. To help us better understand the details of this deal, Amin Saikal, adjunct senior fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at NTU, joins us live. Professor Saikal, after decades of hostility, why do you think that Tehran has now agreed to this deal? What changed? Is it military balance, economic pressure, or the regime's own assessment of its future?
Well, I think the Iranian Islamic government has come to the conclusion that it is about time to open up to the outside world as much as possible. And it is under enormous domestic pressure, particularly from the economic aspects and the falling value of the Iranian currency and public demand for better standards of living. And the war has really worsened the economic situation in Iran. But at the same time, it is negotiating from a position of strength. It has been able to provide a very robust response to U.S. and Israeli attacks, and it's been able to hit hard to some of the American bases in the region, as well as Israel. They also know that President Trump is under enormous domestic and international pressure because of the cost of the war and because of the high prices of petrol in the United States and the economic pain that this war has really caused worldwide. And therefore, President Trump is also in a position to do whatever he can in order to bring this war to an end. And I think that there has been sort of a balance of forces from both sides, which has brought about the current interim agreement between the two sides. But now we really have to wait and see that how this interim agreement will really lead to a final settlement and therefore a lasting settlement. But there are so many other issues which needs to be discussed and obstacles that needs to be overcome.
I would like to speak about the obstacles over the next 60 days. Both Tehran and Washington will be negotiating. Who has more leverage here, and what are the obstacles that both sides may need to overcome?
Well, there's no question that Iran does have the upper hand at the moment. Iran never really had control over the Strait of Hormuz, and it has really gained that control as a result of this war. That is a major strategic gain for Iran, although the interim agreement says that the Strait of Hormuz will be reopened. But at the same time, it has been made very clear that I'm sorry, I think I have lost you. Have I lost you?
No, we
Hello?
still hear you, Professor. If you could continue on as to who has more leverage and the obstacles.
Yes, and there is no question that Iran will have the important say in the management of the Strait of Hormuz. At this stage, they have not agreed, or the United States has not agreed that Iran will impose a toll, but that is open to negotiations after a month or so. The Iranians have already been in discussion with the Sultanate of Oman, and also they may also open discussion with some of the other Arab states in the Gulf, and therefore Iran will have an important say in the management of the Strait of Hormuz. So it is really an important gain for Iran. I mean, the other area where Iran has made an important gain, and that is that the ceasefire applies right across the board. That includes Lebanon. But of course, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and some of his hardline ministers have indicated that they are not going to stop fighting in southern Lebanon, or for that matter, really withdrawing their forces from southern Lebanon. And that is going to be a major sticking point in the coming days and weeks. And at the same time, it really poses a serious challenge to President Trump that how he would manage to pull Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government into line.
Exactly. As you mentioned, Professor, one of the sticking points here is whether the deal can actually end conflicts linked to Lebanon. And Israel has raised serious reservations about the whole agreement. But do you think we can see a situation where Washington and Tehran may move toward de escalation while Israel doesn't hop on board?
Uh, I mean, there's no question that the United States and Iran would like to see a total de-escalation and a permanent ceasefire and a permanent peace deal between the two sides. But I doubt very seriously that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will sort of hold back from doing whatever he can to undermine the whole process, simply because that he continues to consider Iran as an existential threat, and therefore he wants to weaken the position of Iran to the point that is no longer a regional actor. But I think that is where really the whole problem lies, that as long as Iran is in a position to challenge Israel, and the Israelis want to really maintain their regional supremacy. Again, the United States has got enormous leverage to exercise against the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his supporters, because it is the United States that's the main provider of weapons to Israel and financial aid to Israel, and I doubt it very seriously that Israel could really continue a war with Iran for a long time without the American help.
And the details are yet to be finalized, but what we know so far, the agreement focuses heavily on nuclear weapons and Iran no longer being able to develop them. Does this mean that Iran's nuclear ambitions have been weakened if this goes through, or has it reinforced Tehran's belief that a nuclear deterrent is ultimately necessary for its security? Where does it stand?
Well, Iran had always said, I mean, since 2003, that it was not intended to produce nuclear weapons. In fact, the late Iranian Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, had issued a fatwa or an Islamic ruling in 2003 that he considered the production and use of nuclear weapons as un-Islamic. And that has been sort of verified to a large extent by the International Atomic Energy Agency and the United States National Intelligence, that Iran had not been on the verge of producing nuclear weapons. And that was also confirmed in the opening lines of the 2015 Iran nuclear agreement, which was signed between Tehran, Washington, and also the other signatories were the four permanent members of the Security Council of the United Nations, as well as Germany. And that agreement worked really well. And in fact, when President Trump withdrew the United States from that agreement in 2018, the other signatories were quite upset about that, simply because that they believed that the agreement worked really well, and Iran definitely met his end of the bargain. I think what President Trump is trying to achieve, he wants really something better than the JCPOA or the 2015 agreement. But I would be very surprised that whatever is going to come out of this process, it's going to be anything really better than the 2015 agreement.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights. We were speaking to Amin Saikal, adjunct senior fellow at the Rajaratnam School of International Studies at NTU.